Welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Listen in as we discuss all things business, growth, and marketing with business owners, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, founder of Roundhouse, the creative agency, Saul Edmonds.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Tammy Gaston from TLS Marketing around the topic, why social media matters for business. Tammy, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you very much. I like the way you say my name, Gaston.
Well, it is. I would imagine has it got French origins?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure why I'm aware of that. It may have been listening to heaps of movies where people say things in the right way. Yeah, Gaston.
It's also Beauty and the Beast, Gaston.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I didn't actually get it from that. But Tammy Gaston, how are you today?
I'm fabulous. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, likewise. So before we, I guess, get into the main topic and whatever we end up talking about as a result of that, could you just give everyone a bit of an overview of, who you are, about TLS Marketing, a little bit of history, and the sort of services and everything that you guys provide?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So I've been in the marketing / media industry for about 20 years. Sounds like a lot of years.
20 years? Holy moly.
Yeah, around about 20 years, maybe just slightly under. So I actually I've been both sides. So I've been client-side marketing and I've been media agency and marketing agency side. So I started my career in Endeavour Foundation with the Prize Home, so on a charity as the marketing communications officer. So that was a really good start to give me a broad view of marketing channels. I then moved on to going to an agency, so Starcom at that point, working on Queensland government accounts. So big buying power, lots of media, strategy, planning and implementation. Back over the client side with Tourism Queensland for a little bit, working on the Mackay and Townsville destinations. Had a stint in New Zealand, but we won't talk about that too much. And then came back and worked at Zenith Optimedia for, I think I was almost at my 10-year mark with them, like working with them for 10 years. And again, that was media agency. So a lot of media strategy, planning, buying, implementation across all channels. I mainly sat in the traditional media team, I guess. That was digital was fairly new-ish back then. We did have, siloed digital teams, so a Google Ads team and a digital strategy team as well. Left Zenith Optimedia and now have the wonderful life at TLS Marketing for 4 and a bit years now. Working quite a bit on Telstra local stores, so again, very much traditional marketing, but obviously have now grown into that digital marketing space, particularly social media. As an agency, we offer all channels and all strategies for marketing. So, you've obviously got me who has expertise in traditional marketing as well as social media. And then we have quite a few experts in the team. So we've got our, Google Ads expert, Facebook Ads expert, a digital and sales funneling expert, SEO. So pretty much any marketing channel or, approach you want to take with your business, TLS Marketing are here to help you. And although we're a boutique agency, we have all of the experts on our team, ready to assist businesses in all of those channels. So we're pretty, open and cross-platform agency, which is really great to be a part of.
Yeah. How do you feel, actually, just talking about, I was probably going to cover this a bit later on, but since you mentioned, having already worked in traditional marketing, how do you feel? Have you ever reflected on the fact that, with digital marketing is still in the big scope of things, like in the whole, say, history of modern marketing, it's still relatively new. Do you feel personally, with that level of experience with having done it so long and traditional marketing having been, I guess, in some ways a bigger part of your marketing history, how has that actually informed how you look at social media marketing?
Yeah, I guess from a traditional marketing sense, I mean, I'm talking, people have all different terminologies, I guess, what they call traditional versus, the new age marketing. Back in my day, it was TV buying, TV planning, spacing press, outdoor, radio, all those kind of, offline on channels. But I guess what it's sort of taught me is how to speak to people on those different channels. Obviously, outdoors got to be quick and fast. TV's got to be, fairly engaging. So social media is similar in a way in that you have to make sure that your content is of value for that channel that you're working on, and that you're providing the best value to your clients through the content that you're writing and what you're talking about in social media. The social media really gives you a chance to give your brand personality. So all can just see an image and a quick headline, and yes, you can get a little bit of personality in there, but your Facebook feed can really, if people scroll through that Facebook feed, it can really show people, are they a serious firm? Are they a fun and quirky firm? Are they, depending on how you write your content. So you have to be really true to your brand as well on social media, just as you would on a traditional marketing sense, but you've got more space and more room to really get that brand reflection and personality happening on those channels. So I guess in short, to answer your question, working in all of those other channels has sort of taught me the different ways you need to talk to, customers depending on where your ad is sitting, the time you've got with them, and the value that you need to provide in that content.
I like the idea of personality too, because that's not something you really, in sort of our experience too, because we obviously work in the same industry, and we come at it from a different point of view, because most of the time, say, we're building things, and then you guys are helping, either a joint client or sort of somebody then to market that and working together in that sense. But then you talking about personality it's often not the sort of thing you really hear people talking about a lot. Like, I don't, just in the general scheme of things, I don't really remember, like, in all the years of doing this now, that being much of a big thing. But I think the fact that you're saying it is interesting too, because it ties so closely into, like, the big picture of a person's brand. And then how I guess it was a bit of a leading question in a way, talking about how, from your perspective, doing so much, what we'll refer to as traditional marketing, even though in reality it's still just other sorts of marketing across. Yeah, it's not as popular, it's not talked about as much, but it's still a real thing that people, use in the right way. But I guess, like, a leading question in the sense that, it's it does give you a completely different perspective on on how you're going to present their brand. And then, that personality aspect of it, of identifying that social media is great to do that. Like, it's just like the tools, like having the right tools to do the right thing, as opposed to going, we're just going to do it and we don't know why we're doing it. We're doing it because, like, we're supposed to do it because everyone else is on Facebook, which is, of course, in some ways the worst way you can look at it, because you just ignore all these really important reasons why you would use, various things, which is a good segue into my next question, which is, yes, that's right, which is how, I guess, like, how relevant. This is a pretty open-ended question, so feel free to answer it whichever way you want to. Like, how relevant is social media for business in the sense that, obviously, very specific to the type of business, but like its relevance, given that you're talking about, this personality aspect. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but how to, like, from when you're working with clients, as an overall thing, it's relevance. How relevant do you find that it is for, say, most businesses that you work with?
Yeah, that's a very big and open-ended question, and I'll do my best.
I told you it was.
Look, at the end of the day, there's over 3 billion people that are on social media networks, across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channels, all of those social media platforms. So, if you're not there, you're missing out on potentially 3 billion people. And I know not every business would be after all of those 3 billion people, but you kind of understand where I'm going from in that respect. So if you're not there, not seen, people can't find you. Yes, they'll still find your website, but when people are looking at a business and trying to figure out if they want to use them for their services or their products, nowadays they won't just look at the website. They'll then go and try and find your Facebook profile or your Instagram profile, or, discover what else everybody else has to say about you. What do your reviews look like? So, it is important to have that Facebook profile or Instagram profile, depending on your age bracket, or, if you can run both of those platforms, is obviously ideal to have both platforms running. So it doesn't matter whether you're small, you're big, you're a national company, you're a little, local tradie. If you've got the time, or you've got the funds to have someone like me who has the time to help you produce a social media strategy that really does reflect your personality, it is important to be there. I guess for me, and I don't know about you, Saul, you can answer this question from my point of view, but
Yeah.
if I've, looked around at a certain product or a service company, I might actually go on Facebook. If I don't see a profile on Facebook, I'm like, oh, well, obviously not good enough, or, they don't have the time to share their brand or their authenticity with me on social media, so I'm going to go and keep looking for someone else. Whereas if the page was there and it gave me some information, I might have stopped looking at that point. So I guess it's just trying to make sure, and it doesn't mean you have to post 7 times a week, once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. If you can only do once, at least that gives you some sort of profile for people to get to know you as a brand, to get to know you as a personality. It also opens up the communication availability of you. So obviously there's a good old customer service line where you ring, 1300, get a phone call through. You never know who you're going to talk to. There's the contact us forms. But what Facebook and Instagram does, and Twitter, it allows people to instantly message and start talking to you through messaging. I mean, messaging, you probably even text message more than you did 5 years ago to even your husband or your wife than you did, 5 years ago. So it opens those communication platforms. So if the person's looking up your details at midnight, they might send you a quick message, then you respond to it the next morning. So I think it is relevant for businesses big or small, but then what you need to decide is who your brand is, what your personality is, and what you want to talk to people about. And that's where it's really important to get your strategy right from the start, so that everything you do on your profile page, particularly Instagram, because your Instagram profile page kind of sets you up with a little bit of that homepage of a website, I guess. It gives you a quick snapshot of who you are just through your images. So you really need to make sure that your strategy, how you want to talk, and the content that you're putting through those profiles is what your customers are after. And you can keep an eye on that. You can see how many people like it and don't like it. So you might run one post and go, oh, that's got loads of likes. Run more of those and run less of the ones that aren't getting any engagement. And that would start giving you a really good idea of what your customers want from your platform.
Yeah, I mean, even as a, I've always viewed, like, I guess, from the perspective of what you were talking about, what people like what emphasis they put on, like you sort of saying that, you would be, I guess, feeling more trustworthy if we want to talk about trust, because it's all comes back to trust building ultimately even when even if you don't realize that's what's happening or not, it's an element of building trust. And for me, like, this is where it's interesting, because I guess everyone, everyone always makes assumptions about everybody with everything, and you might assume I like a particular sort of look for something. I like a certain brand of shoes, and like, you kind of know people aren't going to be the same, but there's a general assumption when you start talking with someone that, without even thinking about that, they're going to be like doing heaps of stuff on Facebook because you are, or they spend like a really lot of time on YouTube because you are. And then when I'm like me, for example, I don't spend anywhere near as much time as I used to on Facebook. And I don't even really know why, but I think it's a really core and interesting point, because then it gets back to habits that people form. It's like, for example, I spend a lot more time, like social media wise, I spend virtually all my time on YouTube these days, and even searching for things because of like personally driven things that I'm interested in. And most of those things have been on YouTube. So I guess, if you were going to analyze it, is that because then I've only got a certain amount of hours in a day. I don't want to I have to do, work. So when I do spend time on social media, I can't physically spend it on all these other things because it's just not possible. So therefore, I'm spending more of it on YouTube. So therefore, me as a user has become more of a YouTube centric type of user. And you end up, then once you identify, then from your perspective, or, if we're working with somebody's, brand, and then we're talking with you and we're all going, okay, what are the tools that we're going to use for the strategy, then for implementation. I reckon like that is often for people's approach and just general thinking before they even start. There does seem to be like still, I reckon I'll be really interested to see what like you think about this, as people's tendency to, without a strategy, approach social media for their business in the same way that they do it in their personal lives. And then they just go, it's just like no plan and feeling it. And which is, of course, like in my mind, it's one of the worst things you can do, because it's always fraught with a lot of, unknowns.
Definitely. And sometimes people think of it as their own personal profile. You've really got to switch lanes and really think about your profiles of your social media networks as your business. And you need to think about who are the people that are looking at that platform and what do they want to see, not I'm the owner and this is what I want to share. Sometimes they match up and sometimes they don't. But as I said before, it's just testing and trying those different ways to connect. So, you might try doing some stories on Facebook and Instagram, doing some video stories, and the videos do exceptionally well. Those videos that you record or that you run as a Facebook Live, take them back through and put them on a YouTube channel and see how that runs on the YouTube channel. So it doesn't mean that you have to create all these different types of content for all the different platforms either. You can sort of, create a video that then potentially you can run as a story and or put on YouTube and or put on your website. So also thinking about how strategically you can use the content on several platforms. But yes, you need a bit of an idea of how should my month look on Facebook. So I guess if you look at it from a month's point of view, do I want to give some tips and advice, and how often do I want to do that? Do I want to talk about my brand a little bit and provide some information on what my brand or my service actually has to offer from a brand perspective? Do I want to share some other interesting information that I've found on other sites that are relevant to my industry, sharing some testimonials, and then trying to spread those out across the month so you're not running 4 testimonials in a row and everyone goes, I'm sick of reading about your testimonials. Or you don't want to always talk about yourself So some brands really do go too far in terms of it's all about them and not about sharing content of value for the customer. So yes, you're absolutely right, Saul. It's really important to think about your strategy from a month-to-month perspective, and also think seasonally. What do my customers want in the month of July? Obviously, if you're a clothing brand for Australia, you're going to want jumpers and beanies and maybe not so much Queensland, but, you're going to want those sorts of products more highlighted in July than perhaps they are in December.
Yeah. You've got
travel agents. It would be the same thing. What places in the world? Not that we can travel at the moment, but you know where I'm going. What places in the world are more popular in December than they are in June? So really, strategically, also thinking seasonally, what does it look like?
Yeah, because I think like the thing too, which this is, I guess, more related to like Google search algorithms and things like that, but ultimately, whatever spin, people, looking at the use of technology have, like the main, or not the main, but one of the primary sort of things that, search algorithms, and then even as marketing people, like putting, putting things up, relating to things that are being sold or services or the brand or building trust or the whole gamut of everything. It's all ends up as a certain level of the technology that is being used is always trying to having, not sure of the right word, probably like a simulation of real world, sort of trust, because it's easy when you're in front of a person and you're going and you sense like body language and you're talking to them, and it's even like so much more next level than say on Zoom. I mean, like we are now, like it's closer. You've got real world, which is the best, and you get a sense of what that person's like and talking to them, and then talking on the phone and talking on Zoom is probably the next level down in terms of a great way to build trust, because you can hear like people's voices. Then when you've got online, you're still always trying to do the same thing, which then the search algorithms are trying to, if a person searches for whatever that service or product is, the algorithm is trying to simulate, what the person wants and trying to like find results that will match. So it's all still ultimately like a I guess like a watered down version of like the best version of it, which is like being in front of somebody. But so therefore, like, as ultimately, if you were gonna boil it all down, it's like a trust building exercise in everything that you do, right? So you end up, I reckon if you always boil it back to that, apart from like the obvious things of like you're trying to sell something specific and you just like, what's the best way to do that? But still, everything is still about, trying to form a relationship, which
exactly,
in my mind, if you were going to go, and I've often thought about these things as like, is social media good, bad, indifferent, whatever? There's like huge varying amount of opinions on it.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
it still is a great way, media-wise, to build trust in, I think, a better way, like you were saying, like with that adding personality is a great term for it. Like it's a really great descriptive term for, its role, I think, as opposed to like a billboard, which is like, like in your face, do this.
A little bit of personality, you might make it a cartoon or a real life or it's a little, certainly doesn't,
if it's a bit more animated now with all the digital ones, you can do that a bit more. So then it's like next level billboard, a bit more trustworthy, and all those different levels of trust. But what do you reckon too? Because this is something I guess from our perspective, being people that design and then build different applications and things that then like those tools online is I'd be interested to get your thoughts on how devices and new hardware actually drive the use of social media, because we had computers, you had your desktops, in not really that long ago. That was the primary thing. Some laptops are more popular, tablets, phones, mobile devices, including tablets, and then hybrid laptops slash tablets are used more commonly, for than desktops for use of social media. So that's like from our perspective when we're designing or you're thinking about graphics and things, that's an important component to think about, which I think most people just, it's not something that is considered, but it's really pretty important, I reckon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Particularly, I mean, a lot of people will use, as you said, or alluded to, their phones or their tablets, iPads, whatever, for social media. That's most of our, if we're looking at results and where people are viewing our pages, it certainly is on your mobile devices. Absolutely. So you need to make sure that, I guess your imagery, your photos, the way you're taking them, what's actually seen in that little box, because obviously, and I can't, I'm like visually doing a box, but no one can see me. But, imagine you're flicking through your Facebook page on a mobile device. Well, obviously the image is going to then be a lot smaller in terms of the square size. So, whenever we're putting together a content plan for imagery for a client for social media, we always make sure it is in that square shape, because that will show up nicely whether you're on a laptop, a computer, or a mobile device. So you always need to make sure that your imagery and the content that you're using can go across all of those platforms, depending on where you're going to be seen. So yes, design is extremely important, and even videos. You take landscape, you take portrait, or think about how it's going to show up on that Facebook feed, and what part of that video do you actually need to be focused on and seen within that limited space that you've got available
there. Yeah, I actually have always found it funny and like it too, that like the GIF, which used to be, the GIF in let's putting like a date on it, like GIFs in like 80s, 90s, early 2000s were like all the rage, like having a GIF, when like the internet, when there wasn't responsive sites, and when you had things like, Flash were around and other stuff was still relatively new, and they were like, nah, no one uses like GIFs anymore. And then strangely enough, it comes full circle.
And back again.
GIFs are just, because it's then, and that's why I sort of asked about things being driven by devices, because I've often thought, why did that happen? Like, is it like, it didn't feel like it was just a trend that came around again, like fashion. It felt like, from a usability point of view, you've got other considerations, like people looking at vast amounts of visual information and they're downloading. They don't realize they are, but you're looking at a Facebook feed, especially depending on your usage, you're going this and this, and people want everything to be quick. And especially if they're just looking on their mobile and they're not linked into Wi-Fi, they're looking at this and this, and people don't want to, to wait too long for things, even though speed is better, than it ever has been. Still pretty slow, relatively speaking, in Australia than like overseas, but still faster. And then you've got like video, normal content, static image, GIF.
People don't have patience to wait for it to load anymore.
And then you got like, the kind of invasion of the meme.
No, I was going to say, meme.
Yeah, memes are just like, I mean,
the big thing.
I'm sure there's somebody, or a whole host of people on the internet who probably have a timeline of the evolution of the meme somewhere. It'd be someone who's taken the time to do that, I reckon.
Maybe you could do an infographic on it all.
Yeah. I should totally do that. Yeah, the evolution of the meme, which would probably look the same. It'd probably be meme 20 years ago, meme now, and they just look generally tacky, generally bad use of typography, but incredibly funny.
Very funny, yeah.
And always like slightly trashy. You know, it's always that element. They're like, oh my goodness. And that's why they're funny though, because they're so sort of just lame and sort of, but then they have a role too, right? You got this, like even that as a thing, like that's like another, it's almost another, you know, genre of way to, you know, inform people about stuff, like to repurpose a meme idea in different ways. And there's this sort of spawning of all this different stuff. So like, you know, I'll throw another really broad question at you and see how you go. Okay. So is it, which we have actually touched on already, but actually I'll ask this in a slightly different way. I was going to say, is it for everyone? But what I'll ask instead is like, are there any like specific industries, broadly speaking, for use of social media that, you know, should never, or should have more limited, very specific use of social media that you've kind of worked with? And if so, for what reason?
I guess all industries have a specific use for it. I mean, if you think of, you know, a trade-based business, you know, carpenter or a painter, or, you know, that offer their services to the general community, their Facebook page is going to look vastly different to a legal firm. Vastly different. So, you know, the trade services page might have things like before and afters. This is how it looked before we did all the work. Here's how it looks now. Here's the deck before, here's after, here's paint before, here's paint after. And they might have tips around, you know, masking tape before you paint, or, you know, things like that. They'll probably have a few funny memes probably in their social media strategy as well to keep it light. Whereas a legal firm will probably have more serious connotation and information about it. They may still have a meme here and there, but as long as it's relevant and still, I guess, wary of what their industry is. So
in line with their brand too, I suppose.
Correct. So I don't think necessarily, I mean, not off the top of my head can I think of an industry that shouldn't do social media, but I think each industry has to think about how they use social media to portray their business in the best light possible.
Yeah, because I think, you know, it's like, I suppose, like I'll use an analogy from like the design industry of when, because in graphic design, website design, digital design, anything, like you can apply this then to fashion design or like any specific trends that come and go, is that, you know, like design trends about what ends up being sort of popular, especially in certain industries, like in the fashion industry, which we've worked in like over a number of years, you know, people requesting certain sort of like use of font and something else because they've seen it somewhere else, and things because they're popular and people have seen them and they you know, work well. But like how those kind of, you know, trends inform you know, inform, I guess, like a good use of like what you're wanting to do. Like that, it's quite easy for those things to, you know, to override. What's the best way to say it? Like to override the proper intentions that you're supposed to have, like for the brand, like really, and then applying that, you know, then to how you use social media. Like it's very easy, And I mean, sometimes it's completely relevant to go, you see somebody doing something in a certain way, they seem to be doing well out of it. It seems to be good content, but you don't necessarily understand why that's the case. You just know that they're doing well and they've got like a few million followers. It could be for other reasons. And I mean, sometimes you don't always have to know. You try something and see how it works out. But ultimately, like, you can't go wrong. Like, the take home point about, kind of following trends and doing things. But if you keep your eye on the fact that with anything, whether it's marketing or design, if you keep your eye on the fact that what your goals are for why you're doing it in the first place, it's like, well, if you're using Facebook and you feel that Facebook is going to be a good platform for a particular business, and there's a specific reason why, then you're going, and it's because this particular audience is here, and this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to appeal to them. That should still always be, I guess, in your mind with all things, and not let, because it's, I'm saying that because it always comes up. It's always like, it's other things. It's very easy for other things to influence, to go, this looks great, but it's just not, it doesn't work very well for what you're trying to achieve. And I guess that's where expertise, like in any form, comes in, like in our industry, having that good planning there.
Yeah. And I guess that goes back to my point previously, is that, you always need to think about what your strategy is. What's your objective for using that social media platform? What's your brand personality, your brand guidelines even, making sure that you are following those. What's your, what do your brand guidelines talk about? How do you want people to see you as a lifestyle, I guess? So it is important to always think about that strategy and objective, but still do some trial and error. You might do an Instagram story of, if you're a cafe, your kitchen in the background, maybe it doesn't work, maybe it does, but you won't know until you give it a try, as long as it's still on that same theme and that same strategy that you started out with. There's a local cafe near us. They do a fantastic job with their Facebook. They actually do quick cooking lessons as part of their Facebook. So they provide, show you how to quickly put together a brownie or whatever it might be. And yes, maybe they're sharing some secrets, but, it gets a really good interaction.
But it's giving, isn't it? I mean, that's the other thing too. It's like, like we talk about in networking related things, just those principles, which are kind of marketing, business, but I think they're just like human people sort of skills and things that are important. Is like, it sounds to a lot of people like, why would you want to give away, certain things? But I don't think that's necessarily the right attitude. Like, I think it's that ultimately, if you could show somebody like how to develop a marketing strategy, but they still don't have the same level of expertise to implement it. So it's like, it's not really giving away anything. It's sort of sharing and helping. And I suppose it's more than anything, it's like showing people in whatever you do, like, like that example you gave, it's just the simple, like the idea that you're willing to share is often more powerful than like almost anything else. Like it tells people something about you.
Yeah. It's just sharing that content of value. They know that the people who follow their page love coffee and love food. So why not share a little bit of that? That's similar to people who might follow a trade-based, page. They want to see some tips and tricks. How do I paint my bedroom without getting it all over the carpet? They want to see those, but it gives just enough to share a little bit of secret and show the brand, I guess, using that word again, personality, but not too much that they go, oh, well, I don't need their professional services forever. like want to repaint the whole outside of their house. Well, that's a bigger task than painting a bedroom. So, you know, it is about sharing those little pieces of nuggets that kind of keep people following you and interacting with you. And that's what you really want. You want people to engage. So just as your social media, and one thing I would, you know, advice that I would give is if you're just starting up your social media, do some trial and errors, do a few posts a week to see what works and what doesn't work. And then you'll start getting a real flow for how your social media page will look, as long as you always keep in the back of your mind, what are your objectives, what are your goals, and how do I want my brand to be seen? And then see how your followers, you know, play with you and follow you from that perspective. Remember, they're your friends, you know, they're your followers, they're your friends. You want to keep interacting with them. So make sure you're always giving content of value. Don't always splash about, I'm selling this product, I'm selling this, I've got a sale on, I've got this happening. Yes, you can, you know, put a smattering of those through your social media, but don't always be talking about that because you will lose followers. You need to share content that they are going to find interesting, valuable, that they might want to share with other people. And the other great thing about social media is it is another traffic builder to your website. So while you might not be able to give all of the information, like say you're a e-commerce store, or you have a store that's, you know, physical bricks and mortar, and you have an online store, well, you're not going to put your 2,000 products up on your social media page. But what you can do is share enough and show enough and get enough inspiration from your followers that they'll click through and start looking at your website, and that's where they're going to get all the information.
Yeah, actually, I have a really great example of like, or just exactly what you were talking about. We've been generally watching most nights now at the moment because my little boy, like Hamlet, and me to be honest too, have been getting into ants, like, you know, and sort of ants and insects, right? Like, and learning about like formicariums and ants. And we came across this guy who is like, hands down, I reckon, like one of the best examples of great, genuine, amazing, you know, well thought through, well realized content that I've seen in ages. This guy, his YouTube channel is Ants Canada, and he's a guy he's living in the Philippines now, but he's this guy who has created, he's got like so many videos, like a vast amount of content. He's been doing it for years. He actually was like a really good singer on like Canadian Idol or something too.
Oh, wow.
This really interesting guy, but you know, it's I won't sort of try to describe it because you know, it's sort of too involved, but the end result is that what he does really well is he's always referring to, like, as this really super consistent part of everything that he says, is he's always referring to everybody who's listening, watching, even if you're like obviously a first-time user, as part of the AC family, the Ants Canada family. And he's got this consistent theme, not only in terminology, but constantly getting in like every video, every single thing that he does, people to engage, offer suggestions, offer new ideas, like for names and everything, like for these new formicariums. Plus, then in amongst all that sort of stuff, then he's got a website where he's like constantly using all his products in all the videos, but it's just done in such a genuine, good-hearted way, and he presents it really well. He does everything himself, and it's really compelling viewing. And you would think, like, obviously, if you're never going to be ants, it's probably going to be boring, you know. But at the same time, it's just a great example of everything that I think works well on social media for the right reasons.
Yeah, and he's obviously got a really good idea of how he wants to be seen and how he wants his channel to be seen, and you know, that'll reflect back into his social media. I'm sure he shares, you know, the YouTube channels back through that way and pushing the traffic into his YouTube. So yeah, he's
got a vast audience. Like he's got millions and millions of followers, but he's obviously got a fair bit of energy to this guy. But he's he does everything himself, and it's great photography. And you can see, like, it's interesting because we've often then looked back on some of the really early ones, because he's been doing it since, I think for more than 10 years now. So, and the early ones are slightly different, but still a pretty similar approach. But you can see how he's improved, and he's then just fine-tuned content, and it's become a bit more consistent. And
he fine-tuned his brand at the same time.
It's just through the doing of it. And I think that's, I mean, I was just gonna ask what you thought about, like, the importance or probably the role of social media as also a tool for analytics, just to realize things about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's readily available to anyone that uses their social media. You know, you can go into your business page, into insights, and that's where you can have a look and see what posts have done well, how many people are engaging. I mean, a good engagement percent is anywhere between 3 to 6%. If you're above that, fantastic. It means that people are really, really love what you're doing there. So from if you're doing it yourself from a simplistic point of view, you can use those platforms to go in and have a look at your insights in there and see what's worked, see what imagery people like. Are they liking those videos? Did they prefer a video with a caption versus no captions? I mean, generally, I would say it's a video.
It's pretty useful, hey? I mean, that's the thing. I think I sort of asked that because sometimes when I reflect on it, I've thought that's potentially one of the most underused aspects of it. Like, in not only just to do the obvious stuff of telling people about what you do, and, you know, all the things we've been talking about, building trust, etc. But then, like, as just a simple, even outside of social media, just as a business tool to go to find out or to have insights into things that you usually have no way to find, except if you, like, personally go, hey, Tammy, like, what did you think about this thing?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you got no idea. Like, it's all, you know, conjecture, really. Like, it'd be like, well, I think they'd be doing this, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
And with those tools, then you get a little bit closer to knowing.
And it can give you so much out of that Facebook Insights tool. I mean, obviously, you and I would probably use Google Analytics a little more intensely than most would, in terms of how's that goal conversion, where's that sitting at, you know, we look at Google. But for a person who's just doing their Facebook page themselves, if you just go into your Facebook Insights or your Instagram Insights, or they've now got Creator Studio where you can.
Yeah, that's right. And
Instagram. I don't use Twitter a lot, although I know it has its place. But, you know, and even from a YouTube perspective.
That's an angry place, Twitter.
Yeah.
Angry place, man. They just.
So maybe that's why I don't go there. But even
it's
YouTube, you can see
all the different platforms. They got their own sort of flavour, don't they?
So if you go back and compare, you know, on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you know, YouTube, you can see how many people have watched, how many have done view-throughs. You can have a quick look at all of that just from, you know, visually seeing your own YouTube channel page. But Facebook and Instagram Insights, you know, you can see, well, how did that post go versus that post? You know, I did a video that was 1 minute long versus 2 minute long. You know, how far through did people get? So you can have a look at those yourself. Obviously, from our point of view as an agency, that's something we look at quite very, very regularly as we're pulling together content plans, particularly in those first few months, because, you know, you are getting a feel for what that audience is after. And then you really start getting a flow from there on. You know, I've got one client, their before and afters do exceptionally well. Like, we need to make sure we have at least a couple of those in our content plan per month to make sure that because that's what people are looking for on that page. They want to see. They want to see what it looked like before and what it looked like after it's all been finished and renovated. You know, and if you're an interior designer, that's what your Facebook page would be. Here's the design that we've just recently done, or here's some tips on how you could pull together your own quick, you know, bedroom update. So, yeah, using those insights is really quite simple. And I think is the best way to go, particularly in those first couple of months when you're trying to figure out. And then maybe a couple of months later down the track, you'll think, oh, I might give this a go. And you'll be able to see straight away people on Facebook, Instagram, whether they liked it or not, literally.
Yeah, totally. Well, I reckon that's a good way just to go into. I guess I will make this my last question for you, Tammy. Before I get you to provide an interesting quote. Have you got? I know this is a bit more appropriate to what you think works well for clients, but have you got a platform, a social media platform that you think overall as a good all-rounder works best for business?
Oh, that's a hard one, Saul. Yeah, put me on.
No endorsements. You're not being paid by Facebook for this, by the way.
No, I don't have endorsements with any of the social media. Whoever I recommend, I don't get paid on the side. That's for sure. It really does depend still a little tiny bit on who your target market is. Because Facebook does have a slightly older skew still, just slightly. Instagram has a slightly younger skew. So it really kind of depends. And, and then you've got obviously YouTube and your Twitters and your Pinterest and all of those social media platforms. But if I was to talk about a business starting up on a platform, I would certainly be starting on at least Facebook and Instagram, at least. At least. Then you've also got LinkedIn. So it also depends, is your business very much a consumer business or is it a business? B2B type business. If it's a B2B, you really need to be making sure that your LinkedIn page, business page, not your personal one, your business page also has a lot of really good content in it. It's probably one I didn't really talk about a lot. So probably touching on LinkedIn and thank you for asking the question because it has brought that back to my attention. LinkedIn is just as important, as is your Google My Business page. Making sure you've got relevant content.
100%.
My business page is extremely important. And you can use some of your social media content that you're putting on Facebook. You can put that on your Google My Business, or you can just be sharing, if you're writing regular blogs, make sure you share those on your Google My Business page. Update some images of what you've got a bricks and mortar. Make sure you're updating images on there as well. So I don't know if I quite answered your question, but it really does depend on who your target market is and what your business has to offer as to exactly what platforms you should be on. At least Facebook and Instagram. If you're a business to business like you and I are, you need to be making sure that your LinkedIn's got lots of valuable content. You probably wouldn't put a meme or something like that on LinkedIn, but really making sure it's got that nice professional look.
Yeah. I guess the takeaway point and part of the reason for asking that question was one, to put you in the shoes of like everyone who's always asking that is going, what's your favorite one? But I think that people mainly ask that because, like a lot of things, like I'm like you and I too, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that if we're after a service from somebody, you just have no idea. So you're looking for, I guess, affirmation or sort of reaffirmation about things that, so you feel like you're making a good choice or educated choice around it. So then the take home point of that is good planning again.
Yeah, good planning. And remember, people do search on Facebook and Instagram because you can search by your hashtags. So make sure you've got some really succinct hashtags. Facebook didn't used to be as much as Instagram, but it is starting to really now pick up in terms of hashtagging. So make sure you've got some key hashtags. Don't use the same ones. I'll just quick tip. Don't use the same ones all the time because Facebook and Instagram will pick up that algorithm and it will
flag it as being. Yeah.
It will flag and it will affect how much reach and impressions you get out of your posts. But yeah, hashtagging, people will search. And the other thing is to remember, if your competitors are on that platform and you're not, that kind of tells you where you should be as well.
Yeah, true.
If you're on there, then perfect. You're one step ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, totally. That's a great way to go into me asking you for a relevant quote, something that you like that you feel is relevant, or you just really like that you'd like to share with everybody?
Found a couple, so let's hope it's all right. I'm going to do two. And I thought these were really relevant to what we were talking about. So good marketing makes the company look smart. Great marketing makes the customer feel smart. So you want to be a great marketer, and you want to have some great content to make your customer feel like they're really part of your business and really understand your brand.
Once again, that's the giving idea too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. That's a good one.
And the last one is content is the atomic particle of all digital marketing.
Woo! It's pretty heavy.
So make sure your content is spot on.
Yeah, that's like, the content is king.
Content.
It's true. It's all like always. I think if I had to, if someone was going, if they forced me and said, you have to tell me the most important thing about all that stuff, and if I was forced to, which I generally always refuse to answer because it's too hard, but if they forced me to, I'd be like, content.
Content. Well, how does Google find you? How does Google search find your website? Content. How does Google Ads work? Content. So people understand what your Facebook's page is about. Content. Good content. So yeah, it is really important.
Yeah. I guess it gets back to that idea again that we mentioned earlier about looking at, like, even though algorithms and software are there to do things, ultimately they're trying to do in their own simulated way exactly what people are trying to do, and trying to find relevance in something. You're looking at a post, is it relevant to me? Like, it's always then. So that's great. Thanks. Well, that's going to be it for today. But just before we wrap up, absolutely 100% finally, I'll just get you like 100% super finished. I'll just ask you if you can just let everyone know the best way that they can learn more about you and TLS Marketing and get in contact.
Yeah. Obviously it's TLS Marketing. We're at tlsmarketing.com.au, or you can find us on Facebook or LinkedIn.
Thank heavens for that.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, thank you so much, Tammy, for being on today. It's real pleasure as always. And that's actually it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening into our podcast yet again. Before we go, please leave your feedback as well as any suggestions for any topics you would like us to discuss in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Grow Your Business Podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Grow Your Business.